Welcome to TriloTalk. This is a podcast dedicated to topics that we think are important to the profession of medical writing. And our goal is to bring these topical issues and ideas to the forefront and spark conversations in the medical writing community.
I'm Lisa Chamberlain James. I'm a senior partner at Trilogy Writing and Consulting. I am delighted to be joined today by Forjanic Klapproth, who is also a senior partner at Trilogy, and Dr. Sonica Batra, who is an associate vice president and head of regulatory at Indegene. So we're here today to kick the new year off with a discussion of what's hot and what's not for regulatory medical writing in 2025. So I think let's start with thinking about what's an aspect of medical writing that's gained traction recently that we think is going to stick.
Sure. I think when I look at it, on top of my list is the fact that lead medical writing will continue to gain more and more traction. I think people have recognized the fact that the clarity, effectiveness, and efficiency that it brings in, the way we articulate it so well, is gonna stay. And as we, get to the leaning towards lean trend, there will be a lot of focus on really understanding what lean means. Lean is not thin. It's just, adding muscle. It's not just shedding the fat away. So I think that to me is gonna be the key. What does it mean? And then trying to imbibe, institutionalize, prepare your teams to get there, because organizations are now really realizing and growing to the fact that it is important for them to imbibe the principles on not just the content, which has to be lean, but also the principles of overall processes. So that to me is gonna, be very important all through as a theme this year.
I totally agree with you. What amazes me is how long it's actually taken the industry
That is
to just
true.
grip this. I mean, how many years have we been struggling as medical writers to convince those academic subject matter experts that actually it's much easier for an assessor to not have to wade through pages and pages of data and bunk, right? How about if we just get to the point? But yeah, I agree with you.
I totally agree, and I really loved what you said, that it's not about thin. I love because I've heard that before, but you added the extra analogy of it's about adding muscle, and that's actually what counts. And Julie, you're absolutely right. How long have we had those battles that the longer the word, the cleverer you are? It's crazy because it doesn't help anybody. It just adds a layer of complexity we don't need. And I'm delighted that lean medical writing is starting to be recognized now for all of the advantages it brings, particularly with my kind of patient advocacy hat on. When you're writing for patients, it's even more important that you just crystallize those clear messages, those key messages, and you only talk about what's really important for them in a way that they can understand. So I'm kind of pushing not just for lean, but for plain as well. Let's see if we can make that what's really hot this year, which is obviously then ripe for automation, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and actually, I'll pick up on that, the automation. I mean, obviously, last year was the year of AI, right? It exploded on the market with ChatGPT at the beginning of the year. But I think what I've noticed happening is everybody's been running and trying to get some kind of technology, some kind of automation, whether it's AI or other forms of automation, but it was coming from a very tech-driven basis. And what's happening now is people are realizing actually the medical writers should be involved. And I think that's what's going to be hot this year. It's going to be getting the medical writers involved earlier in the decision-making process, earlier in deciding what the technology has to be, even getting down into what is the technology doing and stuff like that. It's moving the medical writer into a much more important position for giving them the solution they need.
I think you're absolutely right. And a lot of that, I think, came from optimistic hope that perhaps we all had, because none of us are programmers. So none of us are in the weeds of the actual tech side of things. And a lot of us just thought, brilliant, AI is going to do everything for me, from doing all the boring bits of my job right the way through to making me a cup of tea and delivering Brad Pitt to my doorstep. Unfortunately, none of that is really happening apart from the first bit. So I think people are finally realizing that, you know, they're not going to get a cup of tea or Brad Pitt on their doorstep. But perhaps the boring bits of our jobs can be automated, and it can help in that way. So
Absolutely.
by having that aspect really kind of delivered home to us, as we starting to understand more about what these tools can and should do, then I think people are realizing actually medical rights are more important than ever.
Yeah.
That's so true. I think the people have understood that it's not going to be a magic wand. You know, you just do it like this, and a 100-page document is right there, end to end, cover to cover, right in front of you. It's not going to happen that way. So yeah, I mean, it can probably take away some monotonous parts of things, but medical writers' role is going to be here to stay, and it's going to become even more critical because, like you rightly said, Julia, involvement right from the beginning. Because over the years, what we have seen, and that's so, evident, garbage in, garbage out. We do not want to get there. Any of these tools, they have to get the right inputs, the right understanding. You know, sometimes when I talk about people, I tell, this is what I can give you. Probably I don't understand what this box does that's sitting in the middle, but I know what I need out of it. So can
Yeah.
you just, help me with these two pieces? Then your jargon is inside, and sorry, I don't really understand the entire tech. But that's how I think we'll have to work together in this piece. It will be entwined. Very
Yeah.
true. I mean, you put it really
I mean,
well.
that's exactly what people figured out, right? Because last
Yeah.
year, all the companies were going, oh, this AI is out there. We can just grab it and run. But
Absolutely.
the AI came in from either a finance background or a sports background where it was being applied effectively, right? But nobody really appreciated how much more complex the language is and the implications of what you're writing about when you're writing AI written text about clinical data. It's a completely different thing than reporting on who won the hockey game, And that was what they didn't appreciate in the beginning. And what you said is exactly right, Sonica. Now people realize that, and they realize why we have to weigh in on it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we obviously couldn't talk about what was hot without even touching on AI. It's obviously going to continue to be hot this year, and hopefully for all the right reasons, but interestingly and in a very kind of positive way, I think people are starting to think more critically about AI and how it should be applied, and what it actually means for us as human beings and our role and our jobs, and especially in our professional lives, because healthcare aspects really even more crucial how AI is applied, with all of the concerns around ethics and that side of things.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to look forward to in 2025. I think there's a lot of hotness coming our way, she says optimistically. But we did promise our listeners what's not as well. So let's continue the AI theme before we move off that, because I don't want it to be this podcast entirely about AI. I think what's not hot, following on from what we've all just said, really, is that technology is going to change or replace medical writers. I think obviously we're going to change the way we work, but I think we all can agree from what we've seen last year and the tools that are coming out there, it's not going to replace medical writers. That would not be hot for sure. I think we definitely need to keep humans in the loop or keep AI on the leash. I'm hearing various different analogies and metaphors for that. And certainly that, we should not be replacing humans in terms of critical thinking and contextualization. Everyone is looking for hybrid solutions now, which I think is a very positive aspect. And what's not hot moving forwards is just expecting one tool is going to do one thing and fix everything, for sure.
It's true.
I agree. Well, I was thinking about what's not hot, and I've spent a lot of time talking and writing about the whole transparency issue or topic. And I think this is another situation of where people are figuring out. So previously it was, we'll just write whatever you want, it will redact it later. I think that is not hot for
Absolutely.
2025. And moving forward, people have started to figure out how painful it is to have to go in and just redact away all this stuff. And in fact, if it's written well and anonymized from the start, you don't need to do the majority of the redaction. So I think that would be for me one of the big what's not hot is continuing to just write all the bunk in there. Again, it's kind of going along the lines of the lean. Lean is hot. What's not is writing all the bunk and then having to redact it all out afterwards.
I totally agree. And it basically renders the document unreadable. You've got great big black swathes all over it. Not only is it unappealing, it's hard on the eyes, and the regulators don't like it. They don't like to have heavy redaction, but it basically renders whatever you're putting out there unreadable. So again, for anybody, whether it's patients or whether it's regulatory agencies, it's just not a hot thing to do. I totally agree.
Not at all. And I agree as well, because once you redact, the entire stuff is gone. Even if there are certain rules in policy 0070, you can't retract paragraphs and you can't do this and you can't do that. But the fact is that you cease to see meaning out of that information if you keep redacting bits and pieces.
Yeah.
There is no connection, there is no readability, and there's no understanding of the text that we are getting into. So redaction is totally out. Is I would fully agree with that. Minimal anonymization, and to your point, Julia, absolutely true. Do we really have to identify the patient ID, patient female aged 36 years? We can simply say a patient aged between 30 to 40 years. That's good enough.
Yeah.
And that reduces the need of all of this stuff to be done at the fag end of at the end of everything, which complicates things even more. So the slight balance between presenting the data that is understandable and also not giving out patient information or data privacy is kept in mind. If we start right at the authorship and the writer level, it eases out a lot of stuff subsequently. It's a win-win for all. Regulators love it, actually. Yeah.
I totally agree. And I think what we're saying then is what's not hot is sloppy medical writing.
Absolutely.
And
Sloppy, bulky medical
sloppy,
writing.
bulky medical. Oh,
It's not hot.
Not hot, people.
Not
It's
at all.
not hot. Yeah. And expecting that either somebody else or a tool is going to just go through and clean it all up for you by putting great big black boxes all over it. That's definitely not hot.
And it also defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do, which is get things out to the public. And you're giving them a document that doesn't actually communicate anything because it's just full of black stuff. If it's written lean and in an anonymized way in the first place, then you can actually give them a document that they can read that removes any of the risk and serves the intention of the transparency regulations.
Absolutely. We need clever, high quality, lean, with muscle medical writing. That's what we're looking for. Anything that's the opposite of that is not hot.
Not hot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, yes, things are really changing in this direction really quick. And I really am looking forwards to M11 as well, which literally incorporates a lot of these principles, that, of course, a clinical study protocol, for example, it is a document that needs to be submitted to the regulators. It is a sponsored document. But who's the audience for that? It is the investigators and the sites. And they end up shuffling pages to find out where is the relevant information for them to screen patients correctly, recruit them right, and then, follow the procedures and the processes and get to the data collection bit.
Yeah.
So I think M11 does a lot of good thinking and implementation in this side. They have really rearranged the entire section so that the entire main body of the text really calls out in a very lean manner what is needed by the sites. They can quickly refer to that. And a lot of general stuff goes to the appendices, which does not mean appendices are any less important, but it makes the site's life so much easier. protocol compliance is so much better. I think, again, that's those point in the same direction. It's not just changing the structure or making it tech savvy. It's also making the flow right so that, the sites find it a lot more easier to follow the protocol.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
that's
totally agree. And that's actually just triggered another thought. Something else I want to throw in the not hot bonfire is people are just not paying enough attention to the information that's going outside. So not just to patients, but to the public and to things like the sites and investigators. No professor or anybody has ever complained to me that a document is too easy to understand or too quick to read. So this is not just that it's good for patients, it's good for everybody. And your comment about the sites just really triggered that thought. Let's have protocols that are well structured, lean, just give the information that's needed and are in as plain language as we can possibly make it, because it helps the sites, it helps the investigators, and it's much easier then to produce the lay protocol synopsis, which can only be 2 pages long. So everybody wins from this. So yeah, let's push for that as well. Well, ladies, I think we have more than tackled 2025. It's very clear that 2025 is going to be very hot for medical writers, not that we're not all hot already. So I am really, really looking forward to what this year is going to bring us. And it only leaves for me to thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We could go on for hours, but we would get shot. So thank you so much for joining me. It's always a treat to throw the can around with experts in their field. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure being here, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Julia.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to TriloTalk today. If you have feedback you'd like to share, or if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, particularly something you think the community should be talking about, we would love to hear it. We would like this to be an ongoing conversation with medical writers at large, and you can send us your comments on our Twitter feed or our LinkedIn page. Just a reminder, you can find all our episodes of TriloTalk podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and trilogywriting.com/TriloTalk. Have a great rest of your day.